Hey everyone, this time I'm doing a review of Hero Factor Rise of the Rookies. He's, there are, he's, this, I'm doing this so I can progress all the way up to doing other films. Nowadays I'm just much like a film reviewer. Of course, I know it's television, but surely the back says it calls it a film. If you read this top part right here, let's get over it. Let's get on to it. The cover, it's daylight in Makahiro City. You can see the corporation, Inferno's doing their poses, but this time looking at the folks rather than looking the other ways as the Kansas did. It says Lego on the top part. It's because nowadays they say Lego something with their brands, rather than being like an independent brand, like how Bionicle does it, and nowadays they're going to say Lego Bionicle if they do bring that back. Like, Rise of the Rookies, because it's called Rise of the Rookies, seeing that the rookies are born, meaning he and Reason Search are here. Side, it has the name, the byline, the thing that's the certificate that looks like a cartoon since 2008. The numbers on the back of the barcode, because I found out that over a decade they changed the numbers on there. Originally, with other films that Warner Bros. Worked on, this and this used to be the same numbers, and so did that. Now that the numbers are different from each other, this is not there anymore. The digital hard disk logo, and these people who I would have thought would have been better to work on the Bionicle if they did do a film for 2001 and stuff whatsoever. But hopefully, if Bionicle does come back, then they'll think about bringing it back into a film. However, in like the reboot series coming up, I'm calling the task between Bionicles a reboot because obviously you know that they're coming back. Like after a long time cancellation, and because think about it, cancellation coming back equals reboot. That's why I think of it. But let's get on to this. The back has Furno's mask being created, built for action, one time film adventure. That's why I'm reviewing this. It's even a film. The plot of how the Hero Factory is proud to save the galaxy from the force of evil, and left and right are like their own episodes. Bonus features the Lego Atlantis, as everyone remembered, like 4 years ago, and the printing of and speaking of which, the printing on the digital hard disk details for Warner Bros. Is now changed. Originally, these used to be like all this used to be horizontal. Like half of this is actually at the bottom of there. The Irish certificate is actually beneath there. Now they moved it there. Now, while this part and this part and this part are obviously the same. PG for mild fantasy threat and violence, and in the United States, I found out it says not rated in the United States, which I don't get why they didn't even give it a certificate. They should have given it a TV PG. They could have gave it a TV PG. Whatever. I only complain about it if I'm an American citizen. Inside, we don't have any paper advertisement. We don't need paper stuff to advertise stuff, but we do have the disc, which nowadays they use symbols. It's like the H decal around the disc. Symbols nowadays is printed on the discs for most films that Warner Bros. Worked on. Proof of this when I get to the other films that Warner Bros. Worked on, and we'll get to that later. This time they don't even put the Lego logo there, just saying Hero Factor Rise of the Rookies, and that's it. Except for Savage Planet, which we'll get to that later, which we'll get to that one on the next review. I remember in the United States, the black part may be there, but this part used to be like the plain disc, as in this kind of thing. But with our country, at least, they coated it with another color which is white, because in case when you press your hand on, you could cause fingerprints and damage to either the disc or the player. Let's get to some favorite parts and some least favorite parts about this. The least favorite part will have to be Stormer, because he's acting a bit too much persistent on the first episode, and Stormer acts like he wants to know why Furno is acting a bit over the top. When Furno was on a move that he prepared for Roa, and Stormer dragged him to the Quasar chamber to recharge. Stormer and Zip says it was Furno inspired that, did that kind of confidence based on Stormer's intentions. Stormer's side, I told him not to think about it, but Stormer should know technically Stormer should have realized he was like that. Technically, the least favorite part would have to be Stormer, because he technically denies rookies because he can't go over the Von Nebula complaint. Technically, because obviously we find out in the 4th episode in a flashback that Von Nebula ditched the mission, and then when they were both rookies. technically Storm and Von Nebula are the most ridiculous character. Technically, Storm and Von Nebula are technically the ridiculous characters in story development. But on story development, if you were in that point of view of the story, he and what I mean by Von Nebula being ridiculous is because Stormer told Von Nebula that they have to stop the drone because and confidence is something and confidence in removing a fear is one of the lessons to deal with. Yeah. And whatever all Von Nebula thinks is and all Von Nebula fears is death, even though he's a robot, not human, and robots always gain the consequence, and yet he had ditched the mission and causing Stormer to strain. And yet, even as a black hole manipulating tyrant, and he still fears death when Stormer scoffed the staff from him. And the least favorite part about it is that Stormer says he can handle these things on his own, but little to know that he's actually risking himself to get killed. Technically, he like Tuma in The Legend Reborn is kind of is the same word, arrogant. And so Stormer will be the least favorite character in this one, but he later does not. But then and at the end, but by then Stormer doesn't become the least favorite. Does become the least favorite character in the 2011 series. He's because technically it's now all about the upgrades, and it's all about the upgrades. Favorite part about this is still a reminiscence of Bionicle. The favorite part of this is a reminiscence of Bionicle. We see Storm's evolution from a rookie to a veteran hero. Then when Meltdown exposed him to a nanobot, it's infected to his quasar core and to his mind, and he struggled too much on it. The backstory between him and Von Nebula, Ferno progressing himself, and Storm then in the climax of the fourth episode calls Ferno by his actual name, and which then gives us the sequel episodes in 2011. And Ferno progressing his missions, yeah. And how we have a reminiscence of Bionicle, and how we have a reminiscence of Bionicles, because the same CGI people who worked on the Glatorian film and the Clutch Powers film, they had done this. Despite it's not Universal but Warner Brothers, but you get the idea. That they're obviously Lego. No. And Stormer and of course the nanobots thing. Stormer may be a reference to Akama, but he's also a reference to Tahu. What I mean by that is because the scene where they injected the anode on him is a reference when Gali transferred her water powers to cleanse out the poison in Tahu's mask. That's what it was a reference to. So Stormer and Tahu Nuva are a bit are the same references, and while at the same time people could say that he is a reference to Vakama on the Rahi behavior when Ferno was kind of like Matau trying to bring him back to his senses. But technically it's a combination between Maskelyne and Web of Shadows' development of the Terrifiers. And how it's a reminiscence of Bionicle, we have the 2009 heads and the 2009 hands. And those are the only reminiscences. Before 2011, they had revamped every single stuff. Like the 2009 hands were replaced with 2011 hands in 2011, and the heads were still there when we've only seen it on 2 of the fire villains. And while the rest of the heroes had like their own 2011 heads in 2012, they brought back the 2009 heads in 2013. They went to these other kind of heads, as you saw in the if you guys got brain attack sets. But this, however, is a bit like Bionicle. And the only favorite part is that they did put rusted so every time they're in a fight, they do get rusted. Compared to because in the 2011 episodes, I had a feeling they didn't look a bit rusty as they developed in the fight. Yeah, they were given upgrades, but even upgrades, they could get rusty. Which I still don't get why the hell they don't even do enough detail. All to that. It's like a regular cartoon. They don't even do those. They don't even give them detail. Well, this is the only thing that's It's much more realistic detail. It's much more realistic than its 2011 sequel. So technically, this is kind of half. This rating is like half out of 10 and half out of 4. Meaning 2 out of 4 and 5 out of 10. That's half and half. That's half of these ratings. And next up will be Savage Planet, and this is Tahamata 1888 starting off.